Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willies. Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willies, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to the United States of America. Good morning to the entire world, receiving our signals via the magic of the internet, created by we the people, created by you, now controlled by the billionaires. And let's give a big special good morning to Canada, the latest country that we've completely, well, you know what. But before we get started, we must go to the genius the sole genius in the studio today, who is Howard Reynolds, chief engineer, and all those other magical titles that keep this station running. Good morning, sir.
That is a title that I do not deserve. I am a rigger. I am a rigger.
Hey, that's the best engineer. I tell you that, man. That is the best engineer that can come out, because you can look at you remember MacGyver? That show called MacGyver? He looks around and he figures out what to do with just about what he got. That's magic. Talk to me, brother.
That is just about the way things run around here.
I know.
I look at tin cans and string and go, let's make a radio station. So there you have it.
All right, MacGyver.
Good morning, Egberto. It is Friday morning at the radio, the 28th of March, and yet the United States is still here, but we're not sure for how long. Our friends up in Canada have decided no more friendship with you guys. In the European Union, they're considering the same things. So we're going to be isolated and therefore fighting amongst each other and easier to conquer. So we're going to be the new Russia here pretty soon. Hope you folks enjoy it. That's about all I got for you. I was looking at, again, I can mention that Mike Johnson wants to do away with the judicial system. These judges are interfering with the executive branch. That's what they're supposed to do, Michael. Did you not take civics? For such a smart guy and all these... First, he's supposed to be this really smart guy and educated guy. He's dumb as a box of rocks when it comes to this stuff.
It's called manufactured ignorance, man. It's not their ignorance is not their ignorance isn't willful ignorance. Their ignorance is manufactured ignorance.
Okay. Well, we'll go with that. What you got for us today, Egberto?
We got a great show, but before I get started, we already have some wonderful people in our chat room. I want to give a big salute to Joanne from Los Angeles, California. Joanne, my girl, you up early. Love you, man. She says, hola. And then there is Jacqueline Campisi from Katy, Texas. She says, good morning, Jackie Campisi is what I should be calling her. Your wish is my command. Anyway, folks, we're going to have a great show for you today. Title of the show is Beto and Walz exposes Trump in red Texas. We also have Democrats winning Musk government decimation. By the way, as a host on this type of a station, I have to watch the way we tell the truth. So all the truth we are telling here is for educational purposes. I just want to make sure to start the program that way. Beto O'Rourke Tim Walz exposes Trump and MAGA malfeasance. Democrats have started winning already, and Trump and MAGA are petrified. They are petrified. Then we have a leaked document that shows federal plans to slash up to 50% of agencies. Let me just say this, and this I don't have on the TikTok of what I'm talking about today. But for any of you who know Elise Stefanik was a moderate New York Republican. She was a good woman, solid, and she intended on moving up the ranks in the Republican Party and was doing so very well. And she was moving up into the ranks. This year, had she not been picked to be the UN secretary, then it turns out she would have had a great leadership position in her caucus. Well, it turns out that Donald Trump started picking a whole lot of, well, to be exact, I think he picked 4 or 5 Congress people to be on his team. The problem is that is pretty damn close to the margin that they have in the House. So things are starting to go south for them. It's starting to go south. So Stefanik, he took away that job opportunity for her to be UN secretary because now he needs her in Congress. So now that all the other positions for leadership in the Republican Congress is filled, Stefanik has to go back and just be a backbencher. So here this guy, for his own sake, this woman that was being elevated, she even turned on her moderation to become a MAGA. And what is she going to have to show for it? A backbencher. And why is that? Democrats have started winning. They won in a plus 15, plus 35 district, meaning Donald Trump won those districts with pretty large margins. And Democrats are winning in those 2 districts. Tuesday is going to be telling. I don't know what the results are going to be, but if the angst of Americans are what I believe it to be, that Supreme Court race, state Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, and those 2 Florida races in Florida, those 2 House races in Florida, is going to tell a lot. Whether win or not, margins in Florida will tell a whole lot. So keep watching. Let's see what happens. But Stefanik is in. But think about this. Right here in Texas, Sylvester Turner, the great Sylvester Turner, and Brian is going to get a heartache as I call him the great Sylvester Turner, because even as I had differences with Sylvester Turner was a great man. In high school, summa cum laude, went to Harvard, did all these things, and it wasn't DEI. It was his intellect. The guy was very smart. He was a good politician. Any politician that held those kind of chairmanships in a Republican Congress should tell you that he also knows how to manipulate the system. You can have your differences with him, but he was a great man. And he took over Sheila Jackson Lee's position. Another great woman. Yes, I've had differences with the Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee and the Honorable Sylvester Turner for some of their positions, of course. But again, these were great politicians. Now, Sylvester Turner died and left that position open. It is on our governor to call an election. But what do you think Governor Abbott is doing right now? Why hasn't he called an election? Because he needs to figure out what happens in Florida, what happens in New York. There's another seat, I believe, in New York that is up for grabs. And if those seats are won, it would be a 218-217 Congress. And if some other Republican, and we know there's an elderly Republican, I don't remember her name, that's going through, what is the word? Senility. She's senile and she's been in and out of institutions. If she goes, guess what happens in Congress? There's a good possibility that Democrats will take over Congress. A lot of things are ifs, but it's a possibility. So there's a lot happening. Welcome aboard, Agolf Twitler. Hey, I didn't say it. He named his Twitter account, his YouTube channel that. Agolf Twitler is in the chat. He says so much for a mandate. There was never a mandate, Agolf Twitler. He never even won 50% of the votes. Let's make sure that all Americans understand that. Donald Trump did not win 50% of the votes at all. So don't let the spin fool you. He never won 50% of the vote. All right. And in the house as well as Eric Hayes from Atascocita, Kingwood. I don't know where Agolf Twitler is from. All right. Here's the first video. And this one has to do with some of what I was talking about. So let's go ahead and play that. I think I have all the bells and whistles set. Let's go. Something big happened today, and a lot of people are not going to talk about it as they should. Stefanik from New York, who is supposed to be the UN ambassador. Donald Trump called her in. In other words, we need you to stay in Congress. That's one vote. And you have to ask yourself why. And the reason why is likely what we see, the tea leaves, in a plus 35 and a plus 15 Trump district. 2 Democrats won one-handedly, the other one that by 1 point, but it's still an important win because these are people that wouldn't blindly vote for a Democrat. And that's what happened in Pennsylvania on Tuesday. And we'll see what happens in the Supreme Court in the Wisconsin Supreme Court on Tuesday, and the 2 seats in Florida on Tuesday as well next week, to see if the pattern continues or not. And remember, even in those Florida districts, the Democrats it would be nice if they won, but it's not about them winning. It's about seeing by how much a Republican wins if they win, and see how that performs relative to the county. So again, the reality is the fact that Donald Trump pulled Stefanik points out that in their internal numbers, they are running scared for those 2 Florida seats. And then don't forget that seat in New York if Stefanik were to leave. So again, we'll see what happens. But I want you to listen to this analysis by Jonathan Martin after the Wall Street Journal article and Brzezinski talks about the issue, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Democrats are celebrating a pair of victories this week in the battleground state of Pennsylvania, a state that President Trump won last November. Democrat James Malone narrowly won a special election for a state Senate seat in an East Pennsylvania district that has been represented by a Republican for the last 136 years.
Honestly, we went down to knocking on doors and talking to every single person. I have support from a good chunk of Republicans who do not have a problem with the things that are being cut. They have a problem with how it's being done.
Out of more than 180,000 registered voters in the district, 53% are Republicans and about 30% are Democrats. Trump won the county last year by 15 points. The win comes after another Democrat in a Pennsylvania House race won a special election on Tuesday.
I think he won. I think we can safely say
majority control of the state house in the Democratic Party's hands by a single seat. That win by Democrats in Pennsylvania caught the attention of the Wall Street Journal editorial board. In its latest editorial entitled "A Shock to the GOP from MAGA Country," it writes in part, Democrats have been lost in the wilderness since Donald Trump's victory, but if Tuesday's special election shocker in Pennsylvania is any harbinger, the MAGA Republican ascendancy is perishable. Republicans might want to take this surprise loss in MAGA country as a warning. Mr. Trump's tariff threats are whipsawing financial markets and their broader economy. The conference board said Tuesday that its survey of consumer confidence showed a drop in March for the 4th consecutive month. Even voters who like the GOP's policy agenda could be jolted by the impression of chaos in Washington, plus Mr. Trump's recent focus on retribution. Democrats got pummeled last year because they followed out-of-touch leaders down ideological rabbit holes. Republicans will suffer if they do the same thing in reverse.
Okay, and again, that's the Wall Street Journal editorial page. It's interesting, Jonathan Martin. I always remember back to 2017. And you saw elections, and one of the first warning signs, and again, this could all change next week. Maybe Republicans win in Wisconsin and that massive race there. This could all change. But I do remember back in 2017 reading something about Delaware County, which is in the Philly suburbs. They elected county commissioners for the first time in 100 years. If it happens one time, it's a blip. If you start seeing things race like this, one after another, like that Florida special election that right now Steve Bannon and others are concerned about. If the Republican wins by a couple of points, even that's a warning sign. It's like, but this happens in off years. You can really start to see how things are going. Too early to say yet, but this certainly is scaring a lot of Republicans.
Yeah, look, we ought to stipulate that the tables have turned in modern American politics. It used to be that the Republicans benefited, Joe, when there was less turnout. That's changed now. Democrats now have an advantage in off years and special elections when turnout is typically high information, highly engaged voters who follow the news really closely. So Democrats do better in these kind of circumstances. But that's precisely what we're going to be having here in 2025 and 2026. And this is why the GOP should be alarmed, because Democrats are energized. Why are they energized? For the same reasons they were in 2017. As you mentioned, there's a backlash against Trump and his policies, exacerbated by Elon Musk this time, by the way, which wasn't there in 17. And that is going to give Democrats a turnout edge in the special elections this year and in the gov races in Jersey and Virginia. And that leads to the midterms next year, where you'll probably see the same energy that you saw in 2018. And the great question going forward is, for Democrats, is what happens when you have a bigger turnout election, like in a presidential cycle, when folks show up who are infrequent voters who don't pay that close attention? Can Democrats finally win those people over? The most ominous crosstab, I thought, from last year's election, Joe, was the split between people who follow the news, who follow politics, and those who really don't, and those who don't. And the people who are highly engaged, who show up in March in a special election in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, they're watching Morning Joe. They're reading the Journal and the Times. What I'm just uncertain about is, can Dems get folks back in presidential cycles who don't follow the news? Because if they can't, it's going to be damn hard.
First of all, I want to let you absorb something important that Jonathan Martin said, because it is also something that we noticed in the last election. People who watch the news in general, Kamala Harris won those votes handedly. In other words, people who are informed won Kamala Harris's vote handedly. The people who did not follow the news, did not follow politics, or were tethered to right-wing news, they voted a little bit more so for Donald Trump. Not by a lot, but a little. You got to remember, this was a very close election. And what Jonathan Martin points out is that the people that are likely to be voting in this year's election and next year elections are likely to be a bit more informed. Well, at least for this year's election. For next year's election, what he's calling out is like, will the American people be an informed part of the base coming out to vote or not? That is not the question that I'm dealing with. First of all, I want to ensure that the people that are voting in these special elections, they're running scared. No bills have been passed yet, so their vote has an immediate impact on what Congress is doing right now. If the Republicans lose in a landslide in Florida, you know what's going to happen. All the Republicans in the House are going to panic, and Donald Trump's idea of a tax cut, Donald Trump's idea of all these other issues is moot, because there are more of them that want to win than simply sacrifice themselves for Donald Trump and then go off into oblivion. Because, Donald Trump can promise you, well, even if you lose, I'll take care of you after you lose. They know that means absolutely nothing. So if there is a bad night on Tuesday for Republicans, let's say they lose one seat in Florida, and let's say they lose the Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin, I think Donald Trump's policies they're over, especially now that he's doing the tariff that's going to increase the cost of cars anywhere from $3,000 to $15,000. Yeah, I think that would be over. But again, notice what he says. The voters who are informed vote Democratic, vote progressives. And I want to talk to my MAGA brothers and sisters. If you want to ensure that you get the things that you claim you want, that is how you have to vote. You've got to stop buying into the lies. You have to stop being fooled. You have to stop being gullible. You have to stop your prejudice. You have to stop all these things and vote your pocketbook. Nobody asks you to like anybody, but just vote your pocketbook. And, the interesting thing is voting your pocketbook is actually voting for America, right? It's interesting. By the way, Adolf Twitler is from Mendocino, California. Hey, whoa, you guys get up early out there in California. Thank you for listening while you're up. He has some good information that I want to put out there. And Adolf, I didn't double check this, but I'm going to trust you because it kind of resembles some numbers I had seen before. It says 32% of Americans who voted for Trump, 31% voted for Harris, 1% voted third party, and 36% refused to vote. It was a landslide victory for apathy. In other words, the biggest voting bloc was actually those who didn't vote. That's a very good way of putting it, Adolf Twitler. But let me also say that those numbers are skewed a little bit wrong, because those numbers would imply that in the people that voted, if you add up 32 plus 31 plus 1, you get 64. And you'd be saying that 32% voted for Trump and 32% voted for not Trump. And the reality of the matter is more people voted not Trump, even those who voted, than did Trump. So we need to use a decimal point in those numbers so that MAGA understands that there was never, ever a mandate. But thank you for bringing that. Let's see what else we've got here. Adolf Twitler says the military is very pissed at Republicans right now for not disciplining their disregard for classified information that puts their lives in danger. Exactly. All right, let's go to Brother Patrick, linia number 1. And by the way, folks, the telephone number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. Brother Patrick, talk to me.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are y'all?
Buenos dias, hermano.
Hey, I always enjoy Augie's phone calls, and because the phones kind of went wild yesterday, we ran out of a lot of time. But he brought up the post office, I believe.
Yes.
And two quick questions about the post office. One, how do we get our mail-in ballots if a oligarch takes over the USPS? How do we know that there's not going to be interference there? And two, where will that retirement go?
I mean, you nailed the two major questions, right? Because the first thing they did is unlike any private company, they forced this quasi-government agency to collect all this money for these people's retirements, right? They already collected all that money. They have, I think, what is it, $75 billion or something they had to collect. So that is, go ahead.
If I understand it, they have retirement for people who haven't even started working there yet. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Again, they forced this quasi-government agency, the U.S. Post Office, to do more so than they force private companies. And here's the kicker: private companies oftentimes, when they go bankrupt, drop their pension, and the government pays the people who the private sector had their pension money pennies on the dollar. Ask the Continental Airline pilots what happened to them. So, I mean, what I wish we could convey, Patrick, and you help us by asking these questions. Convey to Americans the grift that occurs with the private sector, the private corporations, and the collusion with government to rip us all off. The corporations spend the money to ill-inform people. So we have our brother Eric Hayes in the chat, completely in concert with the corporate state, not realizing that all the things that he supported is really hurting him. But that's what they do. Now, with your first question, however, how do we ensure that the mail gets delivered? Look, you know exactly what's going to happen, right? If we understand that a particular sector, already the whole country is gerrymandered. So we kind of know where certain kind of votes come from in the aggregate, except under extenuating circumstances like I think we're going to see pretty soon. But we know where votes are coming from. Don't you think there will be accidents with the delivery of votes from Austin, Texas versus Lubbock, Texas? Don't you think something may happen to the truck that's delivering those votes when the private sector takes over and that person wants to? Yeah, of course that's going to happen. And how do we know it's going to happen? Because that's what they do. That's what they do. The Powell Manifesto leads on. Anything else, my brother?
Yeah, that wasn't even the main reason why I called in. But again, I appreciate Augie's phone calls, and I admire him as an intellectual. I was doing some reading last night, and I think I've got a little more insight on why they're after Noah. The scientific community is starting to sound the alarm on the number of satellites that we're putting up. I didn't realize it's staggering. By 2030, between now and 2030, I believe there's 30,000 projected satellites that are going to enter the orbit. That causes problems with the constellation, and it causes a lot of other problems. The astronomers are even starting to complain about it because it's so crowded up there that they're having issues with it. But when the satellite is done, the way we dispose of it is that we have it re-enter the atmosphere and it burns up. And those satellites are made from aluminum and other
metals.
That aluminum will become aluminum oxide and can pull an oxygen atom from ozone. And it can produce a number of other chemicals, and they're not exactly sure what chemicals it will produce, but they're talking on the order of 400 tons a year of aluminum oxide in a stratosphere, which will stay there for a very long time.
Yeah,
and they're saying that might compromise the atmosphere more so than
global warming. Yeah.
Fluorocarbons. We could lose our healing ozone layer, and that's the only reason why there's any life outside of the ocean.
Right. That is quite interesting. I hadn't read that report at all. Did you send that to me as well?
I can. I was reading it last night.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, that would be interesting. All right, look, Patrick, thank you very much for the information. Always informational, my brother. Let's go to Brother Bruce.
Good morning, Egberto.
Good morning, sir. Talk to me.
You took some of my thunder away because I was going to call about Stefanik, and you explained it much better than I could. I just want to add a couple little things to that. Florida is full of retirees like me, and I think before a lot of the apathy or the Republican voters were listening to what Trump said and not watching what he did. Now they're starting to watch what he does and not listen to what he says. I think it's going to be a bloodbath that we're going to really turn things around there. It used to be that Republicans would attack us and we'd defend. Now around the country, they attack, and we counterattack. And that's making Trump more nervous than a one-eyed rabbit in a cactus patch. And I love it. I love it.
Wait. A one-eyed rabbit in a cactus patch. He only has one eye, so he can't afford to get it stuck, right?
Yeah, that's my wart mine again. But anyway, you explained things much better than I could, so I'm making this a short call. Thank you.
Well, look, thank you, man. I love hearing you in the mornings. You have a wonderful rest of your day, Bruce. All right, folks, the telephone number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. Let's go to Brother Johnny.
Former Florida Senator Marco Rubio. You know Little Marco?
Little Marco.
Little Marco was the one who was behind that forced thievery against the post office. And it wasn't for retirement benefits. It was for health care, retirement health care. Imagine that, the irony that Republicans really give a damn about health care for people that don't even exist. They're good about that, aren't they? George Carlin would be so proud. They love to talk about the rights of the unborn. We love the unborn, the postal workers of the future, which we're going to privatize like Kinko's. And then what they do when you turn 18, oh, yeah, now they want to use you for cannon fodder. Yeah, give me a freaking break. Health care benefit. We don't even have health care now. They like health care benefits for themselves. And what does little Marco do right now? What's he doing now? What did Donald Trump, how did he reward him? Huh? How did he reward the other Florida senator, that bald-headed freak, that snake who stole from the CMS, from retirement people's...
You're talking about Scott.
Yes, Scott, yes. What did I say?
No, it's Scott that stole the money from the Medicare.
That's right, Rick Scott, another Florida creep, stole was Social Security or health care, Medicaid, Medicare. I forget which he took from. Maybe
it was Medicare. Yeah. They were. I think it was double billing Medicare or something to that effect.
These Republicans, Egberto, they are so good at taking money from the public trough and funneling into their own pockets. That's what they focus on. And I was so exasperated yesterday. I was walking my dog, right? And I'm going down the road, and I see one of my neighbors, the cargo doors is open, and she's elderly. She's inside the house. I didn't see her outside, so I didn't think nothing of it. I thought maybe she's fixing to go shopping or something like that. So about 5-10 minutes later, we're walking back again on the way to the house, and the car's still open. So I thought, something's going on. I ring the doorbell. I'm getting my cell phone ready to call 911. She finally answers the door, and we got to talking, and it always starts out pleasant conversation, but when it comes to healthcare and stuff, because she was explaining all her trials with her heart condition and all this stuff, as soon as I changed the subject from they to the Republicans, right away, no, she don't want to hear. As long as you say they are doing this and they doing that, she fills in the blank with they, meaning the Democrats. She doesn't like to hear the Republicans. I got neighbors like that, and it's so frustrating to try to give facts to these people. So
let me just say this, Johnny. You let them answer the questions. Instead of telling them, let them answer the question. Who is it that's doing? That's what's so important. Who is it that's preventing you from getting this policy? Who is it? And then when they have to answer the question, then they realize, it is what we got. And I cut that little thing out that we did yesterday with I think his name is Jim. Jim called, and Jim was very much sure that it wasn't domestic terrorism. But when you ask the questions and when you ask these questions and they have to answer these questions, whether they accept it otherwise or not, inside of their psyche, they're realizing, oh, wow, okay. They may not come out and say it verbally, but you've walked them through the path for the truth. And they're the ones coming up with the truth, not you telling them, but they come into that realization themselves. I speak a lot about that in my book called It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. Because I tell you what, there's a lack of empathy within a conservative mind. That's what makes that mind conservative, right? And I played a video a few days ago that pointed that out. It's just the way some people are wired, and that wiring, that's the only way to get across the wiring. It has to come from them, that realization.
Real quickly before I hang up, when you say people are wired, it works on our side too. For example, I am so wired to be on the offensive and wanting to give names and addresses and facts. And you're so correct. I am so used to that. I have to teach myself to practice the way you talk. I have to start teaching myself how to be on the questionnaire side, to be like a reporter, so to speak, to start asking them, who, how what do you mean? Pretending like I don't know. And that is so hard for me to do because I'm so angry. But that Jim guy, that young guy who let me tell you about that guy. That guy, how does he not know what everybody else in the world has seen? He's got to be
I remember how Howard and I started today. Howard and I started today the discussion on ignorance. There's two kinds. There's willful ignorance, and then there's manufactured ignorance, right? The people who are in the know, they manufacture ignorance, and the people who are the recipients of manufactured ignorance are the willfully ignorant. They willfully accept it. And when we understand how that minds work, Kharkov. I mean, I've read a couple of books. One by I think his name is Weston. I don't remember his first name. Weston, the political brain. I kind of picked up a whole lot of stuff from him and the book he wrote called The Political Brain, and another one by Kharkov. The guy who wrote I can't remember his name right now, but anyhow. It is a different way in which the brain is structured. And the thing about it is, the good thing about progressives is they can get out of their way if they choose to do it in an analytical fashion. You don't just get led by ideology. There are some folks who have to be led through expression because the empathetic portion ain't there. And that's what we have to work with. Anything else, brother?
And that Jim guy, hey, Jim, I know what you're doing. You're acting calm and smug, and you know that gets under people's skin. It got under my skin. You did a good job, buddy. But guess what? You didn't change anybody's mind. You didn't change my mind. So try all you want. You can play stupid with Egberto all you want. You can go, I didn't know. Tell me. No. That don't work. You're glad I'm not the host because I would have hung up on you a long time.
Be nice, John. Let me get to Harry. I got another video I want to play, but I want to get to Harry, and then we'll take it from there. Brother, thank you, brother. Come on, brother Harry.
Feliz Fernandez, hermano Egberto Willies. Well, like I said, Johnny's right about Jim. Jim is in denial. You asked him those questions, and you're absolutely right. There's the willfully ignorant and the manufactured ignorant. And sometimes people, they know the truth, but they just want to pull your chain and be obnoxious and try to get a rise at it. That's what people like Brian and Barr do. They always try to get a rise at you.
Harry, can I interrupt you one quick second? Harry, I want to touch on what you just said, right? You have to realize this. And when it comes to things like race or gender and all these other things, right? We are all trained a certain way. We are all, we are manufactured a certain way because of how we were reared, how we grew up, all those prejudices that our parents passed on and their parents passed on, etc. What happens in today's world where we're integrated and working together is to accept certain things. You have to deny so much of your past. You have to drop everything that you believed in before. And that is not an easy thing to do. And that's why I really have the compassion with people, because if you thought one thing all your life, and there comes this program or this person that tells you you were never right, you were always wrong. Right. Because that's what happened to me about gender and my sexism. That's what happened to me about my homophobia. All my life, I was homophobic. Well, now it's most of my life now I wasn't. But what I'm saying, the way I grew up, and sexist as well. Do you know how hard it was to make that change, that you are to learn, and everything that you thought about in the past was wrong? That's not an easy thing. Right. Continue, Harry.
Right. It's not. It's just, but you made that change, Egberto, and you try to practice what you preach. This is what I like about you. The other thing, the main reason I called is I wanted to talk about the Wisconsin race. I've been talking about this with Alan, and Alan is doing, like I said, he's doing better. Brad Schimmel and Susan Crawford. Now, Susan Crawford, I understand, has a lead, and if the Democrats can win this, and she gets that Supreme Court, there's talk that they're going to be investigating Doge and Elon Musk. That's why Elon Musk is spending all this money and giving voters all this money to vote for Brad Schimmel, because he doesn't want to be investigated. I was just wondering what's your take on that?
First of all, you nailed it there, but there's another important thing. They can no longer have an illegal gerrymander. And that illegal gerrymander gave them a higher representation, both in their state legislature as well as in the amount of people representing Wisconsin in the state in the Congress. So that will get mitigated. Yeah. So there are a lot of things that get mitigated if you don't have a Supreme Court that's bought. But Harry, I need to get some more calls in, my brother.
I told Alan that you were thinking about him. And
give him a big hug give him a big hug for me, okay?
I will do that, and he's doing good with his like I said, with his the kidney situation with the dialysis, and his heart is getting strong. He told me some good news last night.
Tell him I am happy for. Look, I really got to go, but tell him I'm happy for him. Give him a big hug for me. Love you, brother. Let's go to Brother Jeff.
Hey, good morning, Egberto. How are you this rainy, nasty day?
I am fine, man. You know, I hope the rain doesn't get me later, but, you know, we need the rain anyhow. What's up, my dear brother?
Yeah, we do. You know, first thing, Johnny, I will pay for your therapist. I mean, that's all. I mean, God, some of the stuff he says is crazy.
I love me some Johnny, okay? So leave Johnny alone. Johnny has had to take a lot from the right, and I imagine you are the right. So talk to me. You know I love you too. So come on, let me hear what you got to tell me.
Oh, I know that, but you know the thing with Jim yesterday, they were talking about the January
the domestic
6th.
terrorism. Yeah.
Point. You know, I think it was a domestic terrorist. I think these people bombing the and you know, doing stuff to the Tesla thing. I mean, they've got a motive. They want to upset the government. And, you know, I can't get this, though. Why is the left so mad at Elon Musk? You know, they loved him dearly when he was building those electric cars, and, you know, the electric car was the way with the future. But now they hate him because he's finding all the fraud and the waste in the government.
And I think there's a reason. They have good reason, right? They have good reason. First of all, let me tell you, I was never a fanatic of Elon Musk. I always knew he was a front. Elon Musk is I don't say this to be rude. Elon Musk is not very smart. And the one thing he is in control of, which is Doge, has been a failure. The things that others were in control of, meaning SpaceX and to some extent Tesla, have been fairly successful. But Doge has been a mitigated failure, no matter what face they put onto it right now. Okay, so I don't have the time to go into all its failures, but it's a bastion of misinformation, lies, etc. And it's all going to come out because they're trying to do this to build a tax cut. And so the reality is, Jeff, I've never liked, and when I say liked, I don't mean on a personal level. I'm talking about on a political level. Never liked Musk, because I think Musk, like many other billionaires, got a silver spoon in their mouth. They are takers from the masses. They have created nothing. They've invented nothing. And again, I think they are living off of us. So that's the reason why. Really quickly, Jeff, what else?
Putting that all to the side about your personal opinion about him. Don't you want them to
hold on a second, sir. One thing, Jeff, when I have an opinion, I will say it's an opinion. When it's a fact, it's a fact. What I just stated were statements of fact. But continue, brother.
Well, fact, I mean, I'm not going to argue on that point. But don't you want him to find the fraud and the waste instead of some bureaucrat sitting behind a desk? You know,
No, I don't. And let me tell you why I don't. There are specific reasons why No, let me tell you. The reason why I don't is because his companies are more dependent on the government than welfare moms and welfare dads. And as such, I cannot depend on his honesty in the things that he cuts. I can't expect that he's going to cut programs that affect SpaceX, Tesla, or that stuff you have flying in the sky. I can't. So no, he's the wrong person to lead this stuff about government efficiency, because he's too dependent on government. More than 50% of his business come from government. So no, he's not the right person for that job. We have guys in there. The reason why he's a failure at Doge. Let me finish. The reason he's a failure at Doge is because we have a lot of agents in the government already that have no loyalties to anybody, that find all the fraud in Social Security, all the fraud in these other programs. And that's why he hasn't been able to find fraud in Social Security and these other places. However, the place that these guys don't have the ability to check, meaning I forgot what you call them. The reason these guys don't have it, they can't go into the Defense Department and look at the overruns there, because a lot of that is black budgets. So what I'm saying is, where these guys are doing checking for whether government is efficient, government is pretty damn efficient. Social Security is much more efficient than private insurance. Medicare is a lot more efficient than Medicare Advantage. All these things that government run, don't believe the lies you're saying. Look at the numbers. The United States Postal Service is more efficient than Federal Express, DHL, or UPS. But, if somebody just lies to you and tell you otherwise, you take that as gold. I am telling you, do the numbers and you'll find out and you know what? It's not rocket science. If you also have to pay shareholders, executive bonuses, and all these things that government doesn't have to pay, that alone becomes an expense. So, brother, what I'm asking you to do is, it's okay to listen to what the right tells you, but also do the numbers. All of us are competent enough to do basic arithmetic. And that's the thing with budgets. It doesn't take differential equations. It doesn't take calculus. It doesn't take any kind of that math. It's basic math. I got to go, Brother Jeff, but thank you for calling in. All right. You have a wonderful day, brother. Let's go to Junior. Come on in, Junior.
Yeah, good morning. I won't be long. First of all, I love your show. This is my first time calling, but I listen every day. I really love the way you deal with a lot of your disrespectful callers. You don't get mad. You don't disrespect them. You had a guy that called in yesterday that actually called you ignorant. And like I said, you didn't cut him off, but you told him if you respond like that again, you're going to stop him from calling. But one day, can you have a program about the hypocrisy of the Republican Party? It's like whatever they do and say is good, but if Jasmine Crockett called Greg Abbott Hot Wheels, they all been out of shape. Hey, man, keep up the great work, and God bless you, brother.
Junior, I appreciate that, first of all. But let me tell you, it's interesting that you brought up the Crockett story, right? Because, there's a congressman that wants to censure Crockett right now and talking about how bad this is. So he went on to TMZ, and I probably play that TMZ video on the afternoon show. But he went ahead and TMZ allowed him to talk about Crockett and what she meant, even though I'm not here to look. If Crockett was talking about Abbott's disability, it would not have bothered me for this reason, Junior. Abbott got a lot of money after he had his accident. Sorry about his accident. He got a lot of money because he sued the company. And after he got his money and became governor, he prevented other people who would have had that same accident from being able to live the lifestyle that he lived. Okay, so when she calls him Hot Wheels and all of these guys getting bent out of shape, this is not a good man. This is an evil person. And I'm just saying, I'm educating on this. We are 501c3, so I'm making sure to put this not in political terms, but in educational terms. Right. Anybody who creates that behavior is evil, whatever party you're in. And that's what he did. Okay, that is what he did. Now, Crockett go ahead, brother, talk.
No, real quick. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it just amazes me how Donald Trump can make fun of people who have mental disabilities. He can grab women by their privates. He can incite a riot at the Capitol. Matt Gaetz can have young girls on a plane for sex and drugs. Republicans are silent, but if Jasmine Crockett say one thing, she's despicable. That's all I had, brother. Keep up the great work, and God bless you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Junior. Let me just say one other thing about Crockett as well. I am disappointed in the way progressives have handled Crockett. And let me tell you why. I just saw a clip on The View And on The View, from Whoopi Goldberg to all of them were saying, we love Jasmine Crockett, but she shouldn't have said that. And, she's better than that. And all the same thing that causes progressives to lose. I watch them saying, look, I am a very civil guy. I believe in, all my right wingers can call in. I love them, but I'm not going to bend or lose my oomph for anybody. I'll be respectful. And that's the problem with many progressives. She shouldn't have said that. No. First of all, she's doing a funny line. And secondly, this is not a nice guy. And then thirdly, when TMC interviewed the congressman that is trying to get her censored, what he did was after he talked about Crockett, he showed the congressman what Trump did with the making fun of the disabled person. And what did the congressman do? He deferred. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about Crockett. We're talking about Crockett. I came on your show to talk about Crockett. That is what they do. I played a piece on my 3:00 program yesterday where Al Green interviewed these guys that were talking about bad things, but when it came to Trump, they just had to stay quiet. That is the hypocrisy Brother Junior was just talking about. Let's go to David. Come on, David. I'm going to have to restrict to a minute now.
Oh, thanks, Egberto. Yeah, didn't I hear that, Abbott is trying to rip apart you've got the measles epidemic is ongoing, and Abbott is trying to rip apart the ability to get vaccines in the state. Yeah, apparently, psychological damage happened to Abbott when he broke his back because he hates everybody. And, the idea that people in Texas can't get a drink of water as a break, right?
Yeah.
You can't get there is no water break in the state of Texas. And that's just crazy.
And also, and also Georgia, it's crazy. You're absolutely right. David, I have to go to another call, but thank you so kindly for calling, my brother. And you're absolutely right, sir. Let's go to Derek. Come on in, Derek. Brother Derek, you're on. Okay, Derek will be on in a second or two, or maybe a second or three, or maybe the phone's not working. I don't know. Maybe it'll work in another time. But let's see if we can get Derek on again. Line 2. There you go. Derek, you're on.
Roberto. Hey, quickly. I just want to say, for years, I have a Twitter quote from Governor Greg Abbott calling people trash because he especially during the Sylvester Turner administration, because he doesn't like Sylvester Turner. But I have a quote where he's saying that Sylvester Turner need to clear all that trash out of Harris County, talking about some people. Now, see, this is typical Caucasian thing. You step on people's toes, you burn them out talking about them, but the minute somebody say something to you, then all of a sudden you want to cry baby. You know, like that old thing about
it's
if you live in a glass house, don't throw stones. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, let me just take the Caucasian thing out of there and say it's a Republican conservative thing, because both you and I have some good Caucasian brothers out there and sisters out there that they are in the fight with us, man. So and I shouldn't say fight with us, fight with the people. But but you're absolutely right. Greg Abbott is not a good guy, Derek, at all, and we have to stand up to him. And what? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Say, yes, you're right. They're in there, but as well as I do, Egberto, this have been a problem for a long time, and we're not talking about the good whites that's battling for us, but we have historically seen where when people are on our case, they would jump on the other side of the fence or stay in the middle of the fence. But this time, you got to come out, y'all.
Yes, you have got to come out. White brothers and white sisters, you've got to come out. And you're absolutely right about that, brother. Thank you. I have more to say, but I need to get Bart and Brian in. So thank you, brother. Okay, Bart, you got 30 seconds.
Greg Abbott was paralyzed when a tree fell on him. So who did he sue to get all of his money? You said he sued somebody to get a lot of money?
I don't remember the name of the company, but yeah, he sued and he did get a lot of money up front and he gets a stipend every month right now. So yeah, that's a fact. Anything else?
Yeah, I'll tell you.
And by the way, and by the way, he prevented other people who would have gone through the same problem from being able to sue as he did. But anyway, let me go to Brian. Thank you, Bart. Brian, come on in.
Yeah. Earlier, did you just say that Elon Musk makes 50% of his profits from car sales?
I didn't say 50% of his profits. I said, no, I didn't say 50% of the profits. I said he made most of his money from government. I didn't say profit. I said money.
Okay, so the people that buy his cars, where does their money come from?
That's minimal compared to. I mean, all of that comes through grants, etc., from the car companies in order for them to take credits. Again, this is a complicated setup that you got to. It's a very hold on. It's a very complicated setup. That's Twingle. The reason his car company was successful was because, again, the big four had to pay him indirectly to get carbon credits. I know you don't know that kind of stuff, but that is how it runs. I got to go, Brian. Thank you so kindly for calling. Hey, folks, let me pass it on to the studio.
Well, I hear that. Why is everybody so mad at Elon Musk? He's finding all this fraud. Don't believe that. It's nonsense. Believe me, if he found fraud, he would be on the front page of the newspapers, Twitter, X, whatever, screaming names. Since he hasn't found anything or hasn't really found a whole lot, he can't do that. So that's why we're mad at him, because he's lying to us.
He's lying, and he's also a welfare queen more than anybody else. Anyway, folks, love you all. Billy Allison Harrison, I didn't call you out. Glenn Rand, I didn't call you out. Thank you guys for being here. Anyway, folks, if you need to reach me directly, kpft@politicsdoneright.com. kpft@politicsdoneright.com. The rest of the videos are at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out. Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It. As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willies.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take